Here is a cross-section of the spinal cord, and I do have two models that are, I think one of them's in better shape than, two of them are in better shape than this one. This is an older one that needs to be painted. Okay, so I recommend that before you leave here today that you get a close-up picture of the model so you can repeatedly label it. Okay, there's one right here. Where's the other one? It's in the back. Okay. So, just get a good picture of it. Now, before we get started, I want you to understand that this is not just the spinal cord. It's showing the spinal cord plus that set of membranes that are associated with the brain and the spinal cord. They're called the meninges. Do you remember us talking about the meninges a long time ago? We mentioned them in my class when we were talking about the serous membranes, okay? And what these membranes do is form a space that's fluid-filled so that the brain and the spinal cord are protected, okay? So our spinal cord is right here in the middle, and much of what is around it is in fact the meninges and the cerebral spinal fluid. Now this is going to form a spinal nerve over here. So again, we're referring to that model, but we didn't know that stuff about it then, did we? Okay. So let's talk about the meninges for just a second before we look at the model and find them on the model. The meninges are a set of connective tissue membranes that are found on the brain, around the spinal cord, and extends to the nerves too. We have three of them. There is one that's the most exterior, the outer layer, which is called the dura mater. That means tough mother. It's a very tough, durable membrane, okay? And our sheet grains are going to have dura mater on them, and you're basically going to have to cut it off. You're going to have to use scissors to remove it, okay?
So it's a membrane?
It's a thick membrane.
I think you should be careful because something you take off could take off your pituitary gland.
Yes, yeah, you have to be
Okay.
careful. But we're going to take it off of the cerebrum for sure, okay? Now, and on our model, it's going to be blue. Do you see the outer blue membrane? It's all this blue that makes the perimeter. Do you see all the blue membrane? That's the dura mater. It's on the outside. So it's your outer layer. The middle layer is called the arachnoid mater. Arachnoid. What does arachnoid mean?
Spiders.
Spider-like. Well, I'm going to say spider web-like. Okay. The arachnoid mater is connected to the dura mater here, and it's gray. But it has some of it that extends towards the spinal cord, and it's more like filaments. Okay, think of it being more like areolar tissue or something. Does that make sense? So it's all of this gray stuff right here that we can see attached to the dura mater, but it goes towards the spinal cord. So this is not solid. Okay, but we do find this arachnoid mater between the dura mater and the innermost layer. The innermost layer is called the pia mater. Pia means loving or affectionate. Basically, this is a very thin, transparent membrane that's on the surface of the spinal cord. Think of it as being like saran wrap on the spinal cord. Okay? Does that make sense?
Where's the pia mater on there?
It's going to be on the surface of the spinal cord.
Okay.
So there's part of this like the outer margin of the spinal cord here, I could say, what is this layer or something, like right here. It's not gonna have its own color because it's clear. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, this is covering the brain, the spinal cord, and it's usually on at least some part of the nerves. Okay? And when you do dissect your sheep brain, you should be able to identify the dura mater. What's left of the arachnoid mater, we're going to find in the sulcuses. It's going to be brown. So the arachnoid mater will be the brown stuff in the grooves when you do your sheep brain dissection. Okay? And you can prove that the pia mater is there because you can pierce it. And then underneath, the brain tissue is like dense gelatin. Your brain tissue is not solid. It's like dense gelatin. But you can pierce it so you can prove that the pia mater is there. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think I had y'all do that with something back then. Pierce it, that just proved that it was there, right? The serous membranes, the visceral peritoneum or visceral pericardium. Remember? Okay. All right, so we've talked about our three meningeal layers. The outer is the dura mater, say it. Dura mater. Okay, what color is it on your model? Okay. And then we have the middle layer, that's arachnoid mater. What color is it?
Gray.
It's gray. And then the layer that's innermost, that's on the surface of the spinal cord, is called the pia mater.
You said the meninges are on the brain, they extend.
They are, well, think, your brain and your spinal cord are continuous with each other, aren't they? So whatever dura mater is around the brain is going to continue on down the spinal cord. And obviously it comes out here onto the spinal nerves. Okay?
So those are your meninges, the black and yellow things on each side where it has 4 on each side of your spinal cord going
No.
to the nerves?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Now, between the arachnoid mater and the spinal cord, you see we have some spaces in here where it's black. What's it going to be? It's going to be fluid filled, and the fluid will be cerebrospinal fluid. And you may remember that's being produced inside the brain in the ventricles. And then it flows around the brain and down around the spinal cord. Okay? So anywhere on this picture that it looks black, you know it's filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Okay? Any space. So basically, this makes a sac that is fluid filled. So there's fluid around the spinal cord. Okay. Now, I'm going to be working kind of from the outside in, but we need to get this oriented properly because some of the names of these features are anterior and posterior. Well, we've got to figure out which is the anterior and posterior side, correct? Okay. Now, I always look for the ganglion. Does anybody know what a ganglion
A
is?
bundle of cell body.
It's a bundle of cell bodies, but it's in the peripheral nervous system. So it's not in the central nervous system. This is my ganglion. So this is at the base of that spinal nerve, isn't it?
What is it, yellow?
This yellow thickening here, this is my ganglion. And it's called the dorsal root ganglion. So basically it's a ganglion that's in the dorsal root. So this has to be the dorsal side, doesn't it? So if this is dorsal, this side is ventral, right? Okay.
So ventral root.
Here's my ventral root. It does not have a ganglion. My dorsal root does have a ganglion. Okay? Now, if I just had a sticker right here and asked you to identify this, what would you say that is?
The dorsal root,
The dorsal root. So what is this one going to be?
the ventral root.
Now, we know that there is a ganglion in the dorsal root. And this is a ganglion for sensory neurons. The ganglion has cell bodies of sensory neurons. Is this important that we know this? Okay. So, which way do you think signals are traveling in this dorsal root? Towards the spinal cord? Because we're getting sensory information from outside, right? So, sensory is going to be coming in towards the spinal cord. So, put an arrow somewhere here showing that all of the stuff that's coming to the spinal cord by way of the dorsal root is incoming messages. Now the ventral root is going to be the opposite. It's probably going to be primarily motor neurons. So on the ventral root, it's probably going to be traveling out. So add some little arrows so that this makes sense to you. Everybody understand what we're saying, what we're talking about?
So
Is
it's
your
gonna be
teacher
going
using
that way.
efferent and afferent?
In this way and out that way.
It's in this way on the dorsal side
Right.
and out the ventral. But now what does this become when they join together? A spinal nerve. So do we have two-way traffic in our spinal nerves?
Guess so.
Yeah. We have incoming and outgoing signals in those nerves. Remember, nerves are bundles of axons that are external, they're peripheral. Okay. So, if I had a sticker right here, what would you say? The dorsal root. If I had a sticker here,
Dorsal
you'd,
root ganglion.
yes, and anywhere here would be ventral root. Ventral, dorsal, spinal nerve.
Okay.
Put spinal nerve out there to the end, just to remind you. On each side, you've got pairs of spinal nerve coming out, don't you? What are the holes that these spinal nerves are coming out of?
Intervertebral foramen.
Yes, intervertebral foramens. Yay! Okay. Now, essentially, from here out is peripheral, isn't it? That's peripheral. That's not in the spinal cord yet. Okay? Now, if these are called roots, what do you think these little parts that go to the roots are called?
The little yellow things?
Uh-huh, they're rootlets. So what do you think they are? They're probably axons. Does that make sense? They're probably axons here. They're just little rootlets that will join together to make the root. Okay? So I have rootlets here, I have rootlets here, here, and here. Now, these are probably sensory axons, right? These are probably motor axons. Okay. Now, if we decide this is dorsal and this is ventral, can we label anterior and posterior?
Yes.
Let's do so. So which side is posterior?
The top side.
Top.
This is posterior, so put posterior here and put anterior here. Is this going to be important for your practical?
Yeah.
Yes, because you have to know where the anterior and the posterior sides are. Dorsal means posterior, right?
This is
Ventral
front, that's
means
back.
anterior. So this is anterior, and this is posterior, correct? Am I backwards? No, okay. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with our gray matter. Do you see the gray matter in the spinal cord? Does it look like a butterfly to you? But they don't call it wings, they call it horns. They call them gray horns. So do I have some posterior gray horns? Where are they?
In the middle. At the
It's
top.
these two, isn't it? These are posterior gray horns. Okay. So what do these have to be? Anterior gray horns. Okay?